It started with a simple idea. What if I played through every game I ever wanted to finish? That idea became the 1K Backlog Catalog, 1,000 games across 10 consoles, and my mission to beat them all, one by one. When I say RPG, one of the first series that comes to mind is Final Fantasy. Released in 1987, Final Fantasy's turn-based gameplay will have you doing the dirty dance more than Patrick Swayze. Just remember, nobody puts this baby in a corner.
Nobody puts baby in a corner.
Let's take a second to talk about the graphics. The game is pretty basic, but it does have some fantastic sprites. The more I played, the less I cared about how it looked, and the more I was surprised by how ambitious the world was. The Kingdom of Carnaria is vast and ready to be explored. Due to the limitations of the time, many of the assets do get reused. You'll see things like new, stronger creatures with existing models, but reskinned in new colors to emphasize that they're different. And Final Fantasy uses different color schemes to differentiate from its many dungeons, and it does a really good job of it. So let's take a minute and talk about the music. Now, this is my first ever Final Fantasy, so I'll give you a second to let that sink in. Yeah, so the music was not iconic for me. It was just music because I had never heard it before, and so many people came in and commented on how iconic the battle music was, and the more I played, yeah, it is an earworm. It's great. It really grows on you quickly, and I found myself chiming along many times. For me, the music, I never got sick of it. I look forward to seeing how it carries over throughout the series. Alright, on to the gameplay. The gameplay is your traditional 2D RPG style. You move across an overworld, encountering battles and discovering towns and dungeons. I'm embarrassed to admit, but at the beginning of the game, I didn't realize that castles and towns were two separate things, and I didn't know how to save the game, so I died several times. The combat ranges from physical attacks with swords and axes or daggers, all the way to magical spells. Some of the magic does attack damage and some of it's offensive or defensive buffs. One thing to note when choosing what enemies to attack, you can't just throw all of your attackers at one enemy. If that enemy were to die before all of your attackers have gone, your teammates will not redirect their attacks to those other enemies. Instead, they will miss all of their attacks and you'll be standing there like a blind man swinging his sword into the abyss. Alright, let's get into the story of Final Fantasy and my playthrough. The world is veiled in darkness, the wind stops, the sea is wild, and the earth begins to rot. The people wait, their only hope a prophecy. When the world of darkness, 4 warriors will come. After a long journey, 4 young warriors arrive, each holding an orb. The game has a class system, and for our party, I went with Thief, White Mage, Red Mage, and Fighter. The class system plays a role in how your playstyle will be, so I tried to go with something well balanced. Thanks for agreeing, John. The castles and towns have people in them, who will be our main source of information to guide us through the story. The king tells us that Garland has kidnapped the princess, and the light warriors must save her. I quickly find out that Garland has the princess in a temple to the northwest. The first town we spawn in is Carnaria. This will be our hub as we learn the game. We venture out, we run into our first fight against 5 imps. The first victory gets us 7 XP and 30 gold. After another fight, we make it to the Northwest Temple. The first fight in the temple is against 7 wolves, who make very quick work of our party, and I'm sent back to the title screen to create a new party. So I guess there's gonna be a little bit of teething while I learn to play the game. Time to look up a manual for the game. After nearly dying a second time, a viewer hinted that the inn I was looking for was back near the castle I started in. Now that I know how to save the game and heal up, this should be easy, right? We find someone selling spells and quickly buy a cure spell. We also find an armorer and buy a couple of upgrades. Now that we're broke, it's time to grind. Once I equip the new armor, we get through the next fight much easier. And about an hour of grinding later, I head back to the Northwest Temple. A tough battle sees us limp our way back to town for some heals. This is gonna be the theme of the first few hours. Slowly but surely, we work our way around the temple. We finally run into Garland, and he immediately starts calling us names like some sort of elementary school bully. Garland, you're going down. Now, Garland looks like an absolute badass, but we make quick work of him, and we save the princess. Once we save her, we're teleported back to the king. It's here that the princess gifts us with the loot, as a thank you for rescuing her. The king orders a bridge to be built so we can continue our journey. We cross the bridge and the title screen shows and we get a small lore drop. And so their journey begins. What awaits the four? They do not know. Each holding an orb that 2,000 years ago shined with a beauty from within, but now only darkness. Come, start your journey. Return the light of peace to our world. We come across a small cave with a witch who has had her crystal stolen. So I guess that's our next quest. We fight some new creatures like an ogre and a creep. Some of the sprites in this game look amazing. A little more exploring and we arrive at the next town. The town has been invaded by pirates. We find the pirates and face off against 9 of them. Our victory gets us a ship. We can use it to sail the sea. I buy some new armor upgrades and we continue on our quest. With the ship in hand, the whole world has really opened up significantly. We sail around a bit and we end up coming to a town in the south called Elfland. Here we meet an elf prince who has been put to sleep by Astos' spell. He requires Herb to wake up. I do some exploring, some grinding, until we come across a hole in the ground which leads us to the marsh cave. This is where we experience the first big difficulty spike, depending on how unlucky we get with random encounters. Well, we wipe and we have to backtrack a bit. I find a guy, he's in the Northwest Castle and he asks us to retrieve a crown and bring it to him. The list of objectives continues to grow. A bit of grinding and we make our way back to the marsh cave. We spend a bit of time going back and forth again for healing and supplies. A group of ghouls inside the marsh cave can catch you off guard real quick, depending on if they hit you with several status effects. I was met with unfortunate wipes a couple of times due to a pack of ghouls. After about 5 or 6 trips to the marsh cave, I finally found the crown. I still don't have the mystic key though, so there are several doors we can't enter on the lower part of the cave. With the crown in hand, I make my way back to the Northwest Castle. When we reach the guy who was asking for the crown, he reveals that he in fact is Astos, king of the Dark Elves, and he has the crystal we're looking for. We are instantly pulled into battle. Astos is no match for our party, and he soon perishes. Now with the crystal, we can return it to the witch lady. The witch is offering to trade her for the crystal ball. Sounds like a fair deal to me. Offer accepted. So let's get this herb back to the elf prince. We hand over the herb and the curse has been lifted. The prince wakes up and gives us the mystic key. Time to backtrack and open all the doors that were previously locked. I find several weapons, armor, upgrades, as well as TNT. One more run through the marsh cave with the mystic key, and I hope I never see this place ever again. After some further exploration, I find a cave with dwarves inside. One of the dwarves says he's looking for the floater, and with it, you bet you'll be able to float anything. The smith here says he can make a legendary sword for the light warriors. His supply of adamant is exhausted, so let's keep an eye out for adamant. I give my TNT to one of the dwarves and he's now able to finish his canal. Sailing through the newly opened canal, I find a nearby town called Melmond. We are told to pass through the Titan's Tunnel, then go south to find Sarda, the Sage. I make my way south to the Earth Cave. The game pulls a fast one here, and there's a corridor filled with giants, and every step you take is a new fight. I'm forced to a hasty retreat and to heal up. I head west to the Titan Cave instead. Here I quickly realize our path is blocked by a big blue guy, so I guess it's back to the Earth Cave. The game has so many interesting sprites. I'm gonna try and make an effort in each dungeon to show you a little bit more of what the game has to offer. And after fighting through the cave, I come across a vampire. Upon defeating him, I open a chest with a ruby inside. Just past that chest is a plate on the ground I can't seem to do anything with right now. With the ruby in hand, I head back to the Titan's Tunnel and give it to the guy who was blocking the path. He crunches down on it and disappears. I pick up a couple of new pieces of weapons and armor and exit the tunnel. Next, I enter the Sage's Cave. Living inside, I'm assuming is Sarda, who gives us the rod. He tells us to use it behind the vampire's room. Back to the Earth Cave, I guess. Getting back to the plate, I use the rod and shatter the plate, revealing a staircase. I fight my way through the floor until approaching a room with a red orb inside. When I touch the orb, a lich spawns. He's the Fiend of Earth. It's not a very tough fight, and walking up to the throne afterwards teleports the party outside the cave. After some brief exploration, we make our way to the town of Crescent Lake. where I stock up, grab some gear upgrades. It's in this town we find 12 sages. Upon speaking to them, our party receives a canoe. Now we can traverse rivers. I'm also told to go to the volcano and fight the fire fiend. So I'm off to find this volcano. Fighting through the volcano, we come across a bunch of new enemies, such as the Sphinx and fire, as well as some upgraded gargoyles and hydras. This dungeon also has a lot of chests, with one room containing a whopping 12 chests in it. I come to the end of the volcano and find the next orb. It's being defended by Carrie, who is a 6-armed serpent lady, I guess. Carrie puts up a good fight, but ultimately our party comes out on top. The orb is restored and I can now teleport out. Next up, we're off to the ice cavern. Here is a big difficulty spike. The sorcerers here give me a lot of grief with their paralyze ability. And we encounter the mage. With a single move, the mage can cast Rub and erase one of our party members instantly. My party falls and it's a demoralizing loss. The plan now is to head back to the volcano, finish clearing it out, and hopefully grind out a few more levels. I continue exploring. To the far north, I find a castle called the Citadel of Trials. With our crown, we can head to the throne room and begin exploring this dungeon. This dungeon has a really unique system going on where you have to enter these little portals or pedestals and you teleport around, and I've left that here to show you. I've cut out all the battles and you can just see me exploring this dungeon, teleporting around. I end up looping around a little bit here trying to find my way. We find Zeus. We also come across a really important item, and that is the healing rod. This healing rod ends up being a really nice boost to our party in combat when we need just that little extra top up to keep ourselves going. So the healing rod is really helpful in this game. We pick up some more items on our way to the end of the dungeon, where ultimately we get Tail. And I don't really know what Tail does yet, but hopefully we find out soon. And after we touch the throne, we are met with a zombie dragon, and this is a pretty cool looking sprite, and this dragon doesn't really put up much of a fight, so we dispatch it pretty quickly. I do some more exploring, but it's all for naught. It seems that the only way forward is through the ice cavern. Exploring through is dangerous with many near-death encounters. Finally though, I drop down a hole that lands me at a chest that has been surrounded by holes. Immediately we have an encounter with I. This is my favorite sprite in the entire game, but my joy is instantly gone as we enter this fight down one party member already, and the I casts XXXX. That's 4 X's, and it instantly kills another party member. The I hits me again with Brack, turning me to stone, and it's not looking good. On the next move, the Eye casts Glance, turning yet another party member to stone, and ending this run through the ice cavern. I go do a bit of grinding, and on the very next encounter, I finally get a good run. One hit, that's a crit, that's a crit, that's a great... Oh! One shot! You got no chance. One shot. Hell yes. Now with the eye out of the way, I can open the chest containing the floater. With the floater, we can now sail through the skies at an incredibly fast speed, and it makes travel so much easier. First stop, Gaia. It's here we learn that a fairy has been kidnapped. I run into a pirate who says he's bottled the fairy and sold her to a caravan. The next stop is the town of Lufnia? We can't understand anybody here, and all they seem to be able to say is Lupa Lupa. It reminded me of a confused Oompa Loompa from Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory. Next, I start exploring the small northern islands. They have holes in the ground. Here, there are several chests and many dragons to meet. One of these holes I find has Bahamut. We give him Tail as proof of our courage. Bahamut turns us into adults. At least it looks like we've turned into a larger version of ourselves. Our party can now use a wider range of weapons and armor. Making my way west, I come across the small town of Onrak. Here we are informed about a caravan in the western desert. Maybe we'll find the ferry there. Several people in this town also mention how nice it is to have legs, or how nice my legs are. That's quite strange. The town also has a submarine, but it requires Oxyale. Add another thing to the list that we need to find. Going west to the desert, I find the caravan, and I buy the bottle for 50,000. I immediately open the bottle and the fairy appears and it's gone. I head back to Gaia to see if the fairy has returned. Upon speaking to the fairy, she thanks us and gives us Oxy Ale from the spring. Returning to Onrak, we hand over the Oxy Ale and are told the mermaids are waiting for our help. We end up in an underground water dungeon. After a little bit of exploration, I come across what looks to be a prison area. One of the mermaids informs me that there is a kraken on the bottom floor. One of the many chests we find has slab, which I think is used for the language translation. After a bit more exploration and fighting, I finally get to the room with the orb. Upon touching the orb, we summon the Kraken, the fiend of water. The fight with the Kraken goes back and forth a little bit. We see ourselves come out on top, and now we only have one more orb to go. Now it's time to explore the waterfall. Entering the waterfall, I quickly realize we're in for another dungeon crawl. This one's not too bad though. I soon come across a robot with 6 chests in a room. Speaking to the robot, he gives us a cube and says we can transfer to the floating castle with it. From here, I head back to Melmond and deliver the slab. I think now we can speak Lefinish? Let's go to Lufinia. Here we learn the robots were made by the ancestors of the Lefinish, and they also talk about the floating castle. I find out the Mirage Tower is an entrance to the floating castle. After talking with everyone, the last guy gives us Chime. It's needed to enter the Mirage Tower. Now, off to the desert and the Mirage Tower. Inside the tower, I encounter a blue dragon who is guarding the transporter. The cube I have will allow us to use the transporter. I assume at this point we are teleported to the Sky Castle. That's been referenced several times recently. After a good bit of exploring, I find adamant. So now we can give that to the dwarf smith. I get to a level in the Sky Castle that looks like a never-ending maze, so I decide to head off and turn in this adamant and see what that might progress. In exchange for the adamant, we receive Excalibur. It didn't seem to progress the story, however, so I guess it's back to the Sky Castle. After over 4 hours in the Sky Castle and figuring out the puzzle at the end, we finally meet Tiamat. He is the Fiend of Wind. He is defending the final orb, so I'm expecting a good fight. Tiamat is a really cool looking 4-headed dragon. After about 800 or so points of damage, Tiamat falls and we teleport out. Travel back to Crescent Lake to talk to the sages now that the 4 orbs have been recovered. The sages tell us that the enemy is 2,000 years in the past. We learn that the Temple of the Fiend is in the center of the 4 altars. The center of the 4 altars looks to be near the beginning of the game. I head back to the first dungeon where we first defeated Garland. In the center of the room is a black orb. Covering the black orb with the 4 orbs we've recovered will open the time gate. I step through, travel 2,000 years back in time. Doing so reveals a vast multi-level dungeon to explore. As I fight my way through the floors, we see each boss that has protected the associated orbs. Fighting them is much easier this time around. After defeating the 4 bosses again and advancing through a little bit further, we once again meet Garland. This time, he's had a glow up. His name is now Chaos, an absolute unit of a sprite that fills the entire enemy grid. This boss is a large difficulty spike. I'd love to say I defeated him first try, but unfortunately, after a long battle, Chaos gets the best of me. And after losing about 2.5 hours of progress, it's back to the grind. One of the first things I need to do to be better prepared for Chaos is learn the fast spell. You're not able to unlearn spells in Final Fantasy 1, so I was forced to give this spell to Ark, who unfortunately is not a proficient caster, so he will only have a limited number of casts. After about 3 hours of grinding, our team is at about level 34, 35. I feel confident about taking on Chaos at this point. I make short work of the first 4 bosses and all that's left is Chaos himself. Starting this fight, I went all defensive, as well as casting Fast on Thea, who I was informed later that Fast does not stack, so please ignore all of my repeated casts here, and yeah, this is just a lesson learned. Chaos goes down surprisingly quick this time, and as he's defeated, he breaks apart and the time loop has been broken. 3 hits for 303. Very good hit. He's dead. He's dead. Is this it? Is this the end? Oh. What is this? What's going on? He's breaking apart. Bit dramatic, Chaos. Little bit dramatic. The time loop is now broken. The 2,000-year-long battle is over. Peace prevails. Control of the 4 elements, earth, wind, fire, and water, again belongs to the earth. Garland's hatred burned for 2,000 years. That hatred led the 4 powers to this world. Chaos was created from those 4. Evil dominated the world and covered it in darkness. But it is over now. Wrong has been set right. Light warriors are returning. As they travel in time, the world returns to normal. Sarah and Jane wait for them. Of course, Garland does too. But when did it ever happen? Everything went mad in a day. The reason lies in the 2,000-year time loop. The 4 chose to become one force and fight against the 4 evil forces that set darkness upon the world. When the 4 return, it will be to their past. All of the signs of battle with the forces will be erased. But the legend will live on, passed down by dwarves, the elves, and the dragons. Passed on by peoples unsure where the story came from. The Light Warriors return from their journey back in time 2,000 years. The memories stored deep in their hearts will protect the world. Never forget the good and true. Never turn the 4 powers to the dark side. And truth will always live in the hearts of the people. Light Warriors who broke the 2,000-year time loop is truly a Light Warrior. That warrior was you. May the orbs always shine. What are we drawing here? Is this the logo? Oh, the end. That took me way longer than I should have to figure out what the hell it was drawing. So what did I think of my first ever Final Fantasy? It was pretty interesting to go back in time and see where some of these early RPGs got their start, and it was some bumps in the road, but it was mostly good. Let's start with the cons first. There is a horrific inventory system in this game, more along the lines of when you're equipping items, what you have equipped also fits into the same inventory as what you're picking up. But you get to a point in the game where you're equipping 3 out of your 4 slots, so each character is only picking up maybe 1 item of armor at a time, so you're really limited on how much inventory space you can distribute that way. It's not as bad for weapons because you're only equipping 1 weapon. The other really horrible thing is when you go to a shop and you need to buy potions, potions are really paramount in this game. You need a lot of potions to keep yourself going, especially through the middle parts of the game. And buying 99 potions is excessively annoying. And I don't know if it was a limitation at the time. They couldn't allow you to buy 99 potions at a time, but that is a downfall of this one, unfortunately. The save game system is also another area that's a little bit of a weak point. As an RPG, there is a little bit of leniency I have with some of these things, but it is still quite frustrating when you're 2 hours into a dungeon and you wipe and you're completely done. That's probably more of a sign of the times than anything else, but those quality of life things that exist today are just non-existent in this game. Another con I have is the spell system. It's a little bit limited in how many spells you can have in each category, as well as how many times you can use a spell from each category. There's a lot of overlapping spells that you could use in the same spell range. It takes a bit of getting used to. It's not the worst thing in the world, but I do prefer just a straight up magicka or mana system than this sort of tiered spell strengths. Overall, it's got more going for it than not. It has a really solid RPG story, and for the time, it would have been incredibly great value for money. Another positive I have from this is you can choose the party that you want. You can choose to go all magic if you want. You can choose to go, everybody's a fighter, everybody's a ninja, whatever you want. That sort of choice is really good freedom for the time. One of my favorite things about this game, probably my favorite thing about this game, is some of the sprites. Some of the sprites are just phenomenal. They're just beautiful. And to see some of this old 8-bit work, to go back and play it and still be able to appreciate it today is really good. It is my favorite part of this game, is the sprites. Now, one of the cons was the difficulty spikes, but the good thing is with RPGs, typically any difficulty spike can be overcome by just spending more time in the game, grinding it out, and leveling up your character. I also quite liked how there was a lot of unique and varied dungeons. You have the marsh cave, you have all the undead in there, you have the volcano and a bunch of fire-themed creatures in there. You have the underwater one. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, where you go in the submarine. That is also a really good one. You have a lot of water-based creatures in there. So for 1987, this is crazy cool. If I had to give this a score today, I'd give it a 6. Not a bad 6, a good 6. A 6 that leans me towards wanting to play, not a 6 that leans me towards this is going to be a waste of time. What an interesting distinction I find. With a 6, some people say that's a bad game. I'm saying this is a good 6. I don't think 6 is a bad score here. So I do think it's a worthwhile game to look into. Difficulty, I give this a 4, mainly because there were a couple of difficulty spikes where the amount of time I would have had to spend playing was drastically increased because of these difficulty spikes. All in all, this took me 54 hours to beat. That is not a good time. And I bet you, if you played this today with a guide, you could probably get it done in like 35, 40 hours. I made a lot of mistakes along the way. I died several times, losing lots of progress, and I explored the world at times where I had no idea what to do, only to find myself backtracking to places that were a complete waste of time. That's just the nature of RPGs in a lot of cases. Would I recommend you play this game today? If you've already played other Final Fantasy games and this is your jam, but you haven't played it yet, I do recommend it. It's a fun game to play. I would, however, recommend you maybe look into the Pixel Remaster versions of this, which does have some quality of life features that have been added in. And I believe there's speed settings you can get so you can walk faster and all sorts of stuff like that. That is definitely something I'm going to look into in the future with some of these games I play, especially these Final Fantasy games. Well, there it is, my first ever Final Fantasy in the books. I want to thank everybody who stopped by the streams. This particular game got a lot of people excited to watch, and I had a lot of awesome people stop by and show their support. So I want to say I genuinely appreciate that. So what's next? We do a random draw, and I just use a random number generator to pick the next game on the NES list. And next up is Arkista's Ring. Now, I had never heard of this game before this random draw, but stay tuned. You might be pleasantly surprised. And thank you very much for watching. Please feel free to follow any of these up here and show your support, like, subscribe, and I will see you next time.